The grand lecture hall of the esteemed university was a hive of hushed energy, a place where intellectual curiosity mingled with the unspoken pressure of academic ambition. The annual conference, a gathering of bright minds from across the nation, had reached its crescendo. Whispers of groundbreaking research, intense debates, and networking opportunities filled the air. But one individual, more than any other, held the room captive with an anticipatory buzz: Professor Richard Anderson. He was a name whispered with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Known throughout the halls of academia for his sharp wit, his unwavering commitment to modern thought, and his penchant for challenging conventional beliefs, Professor Anderson was a force of nature. His lectures were not merely lessons. They were performances, intellectual spectacles designed to dissect and dismantle archaic notions, often with a particular target in his sights: religious faith. This year, among the assembled scholars and students, sat a young man named Barron Trump. A quiet presence, he had earned his place among the elite through sheer academic brilliance, although whispers of his lineage, of the family name that preceded him, were impossible to ignore. Barron possessed a keen intellect, a sharp mind that had already shown itself capable of navigating the complex landscape of modern thought. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, a demeanor that belied the weight of expectation that often accompanied him. As the students filed into the lecture hall, the atmosphere crackled with expectation. Professor Anderson's reputation preceded him. His lectures were known for their provocative nature, their often acerbic critiques of traditional values, and their undeniable ability to provoke debate. Today's topic, plastered on the digital screen behind the podium, read, "Leaving Antiquated Beliefs Behind, Embracing Modern Rationality." The title itself was a challenge, a declaration of war against the perceived shackles of outdated ideologies. Professor Anderson strode to the podium, a figure of controlled energy, his crisp-tailored suit and precisely coiffed hair a stark contrast to his often controversial viewpoints. He surveyed the room, his gaze sharp and discerning, taking in the faces, assessing the audience. A slight, almost imperceptible smirk played on his lips as his eyes briefly met those of Barron. It was a glance that hinted at the intellectual sparring match that was about to commence. "Good morning, everyone," Anderson began, his voice resonant and clear, carrying through the cavernous hall. "Let us, as we often do, address the elephant in the room. And by that, I am not referring to any unsubstantiated political leanings or family histories that may be relevant. Today's topic requires a little more focus than that. Let's talk about belief, specifically, the cognitive dissonance of adhering to outdated religious dogma in our enlightened age." He paused, allowing his words to hang in the air, before continuing with a voice that dripped with both authority and a subtle undertone of condescension. "Studies consistently show an inverse correlation between intelligence and religious belief. In simpler terms, for those of you who might need it explained with additional details," he smirked, directing his gaze towards the back of the room, where Barron was seated. "The smarter you are, the less likely you are to be swayed by supernatural fantasies, simplistic explanations for complex phenomena." A palpable wave of discomfort rippled through the room. Several students shifted in their seats, avoiding eye contact, while others scribbled furiously in their notebooks, attempting to capture every nuance of the professor's argument. Anderson continued, his voice gaining momentum. "Look at the graph I've prepared for this occasion." He gestured towards a large screen where a line representing religiosity was plummeting downwards as a line indicating intelligence was climbing upwards. He let the data speak, while he added another pointed look at the direction of Barron. "This declining line," he announced with a flourish, "this is what happens to religious belief as IQ and education levels rise." Fascinating, isn't it? Though I suppose some people's family traditions may, for better or worse, make that particular evolution a little more challenging. Another pointed glance, another subtle jab. From his position near the back, Professor Thompson, a colleague of Anderson's, watched with growing concern. He'd seen Anderson push boundaries before, challenge prevailing views. But today felt different. There was a personal edge, a specific focus that he hadn't witnessed before, as his colleague continued to cross lines of polite academic discourse. Anderson, seemingly oblivious to the growing unease in the room, pressed on, his voice laced with intellectual superiority. "You know what I find truly remarkable? In this very room, we have some of the brightest young minds in America. Future scientists, leaders, thinkers. Yet, I guarantee, some of you still cling to these primitive beliefs, unable to break free from your cognitive limitations. Still clinging to these illogical fairy tales. What does this say about a person, about their intellectual capacity, when they still believe in an invisible sky daddy in 2025? His eyes locked onto Barron. "Perhaps some of our more politically connected students would care to enlighten us," he challenged, the tension in the room now palpable, as students waited with bated breath. A beat of silence followed his final statement, a pause so heavy that one could almost hear the collective intake of breath. No one, not even Anderson himself, was prepared for what would happen next. Barron Trump, the object of his intellectual barbs, slowly rose to his feet. He stood tall, composed, his jaw set in a quiet strength. He then spoke, his voice calm, measured, cutting through the tension like a surgeon's blade. Barron Trump rose, a figure of controlled dignity amidst the burgeoning tension. The eyes of the entire lecture hall, from the nervous students to the intrigued professors, were now fixed on him. He was a study in composure, his face an impassive mask, his gaze level with the professor. He was a man, it seemed, unfazed by the intellectual storm brewing around him. "Professor Anderson," he began, his voice surprisingly calm, yet resonant with a subtle firmness. "Your points are well presented, your arguments assertive." He paused for a beat, allowing the subtle emphasis to hang in the air. "However, they are also a simplification, an incomplete picture that lacks a crucial dimension." A hush fell over the lecture hall. Professor Anderson's face registered surprise, a flicker of something akin to annoyance. He had anticipated a reaction, perhaps a hesitant rebuttal, but not this. He leaned forward slightly, his expression a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "And what, Mr. Trump, is this crucial dimension you speak of?" he asked, his voice now laced with a hint of challenge. Barron took a slow, deliberate breath, gathering his thoughts. "The crucial dimension, Professor, is the human experience. You speak of graphs and statistical correlations, but these, while informative, fail to capture the essence of faith. You cannot quantify the solace it offers, the meaning it provides, the hope it instills." His voice grew stronger with each word, his composure unwavering. "You seem to assume that faith is purely an intellectual exercise, a product of ignorance. But what if it's more? What if it's a fundamental human need, a deep-seated yearning for something beyond ourselves?" Professor Anderson chuckled, a short, dismissive sound. "Mr. Trump, with all due respect, the human experience is a subjective and unreliable metric. We're scientists here, and we deal in quantifiable evidence, not ephemeral feelings." "Feelings?" Barron countered, his voice rising slightly, a hint of passion entering his tone. "It's not just about feelings. It's about a connection, a search for purpose that transcends the purely rational. It's about ethics, morality, a compass to guide our actions. You're dismissing the very foundation of our civilization, of our shared values, in your quest for an elusive, unattainable pure rationality." A murmur rippled through the hall. Some students were nodding in agreement, others looked uncomfortable, sensing the storm brewing. Professor Thompson, from his seat in the audience, felt a surge of relief. Someone was finally challenging Anderson, forcing him to confront the potential flaws in his arguments. Anderson pushed back, his face flushed with irritation. "Civilization. Values. These are constructs, Mr. Trump, built on the foundations of superstition. We are moving past the childish notions of good and evil that the religions have created." He gestured dismissively. "We are building a better, more rational world. Is that truly a better world?" Barron countered. "A world devoid of compassion, forgiveness, and sacrifice. A world where only logic reigns, where empathy is seen as weakness. The history of humanity is not defined by scientific advancements alone. It is also a story of the triumph of the human spirit in the face of adversity, of the pursuit of something greater than ourselves." Anderson's jaw tightened. "You are naive, Mr. Trump. Sentimentality has no place in this conversation." "Perhaps not," Barron conceded, "but without it, we are left with a cold, calculating existence. I would like to ask all of you present, if you, in your quest for academic superiority, have considered that what you seek to diminish is what the world seeks to embrace." The lecture hall was now in a state of near silence. A lone cough broke the tension, but it was quickly followed by a heavy hush. The intellectual clash had ignited. Barron and Anderson stood poised, each a beacon of opposing viewpoints, the fate of the debate, and perhaps the direction of the conference, hanging precariously in the balance. The air crackled with unspoken words, challenging assumptions, and clashing philosophies. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, a palpable tension that hummed through the grand hall. Barron Trump stood his ground, his words still echoing in the air, challenging the very core of Professor Anderson's beliefs. The professor's face was a mask of barely concealed anger, his eyes narrowed as he glared at the young man. He had been challenged, publicly and directly, and his carefully constructed world of intellectual superiority was suddenly under siege. "Mr. Trump," Anderson finally said, his voice tight with a controlled fury, "you speak of sentimentality and compassion, but these are often the tools of manipulation, used to justify irrational actions, to control populations. The truly enlightened are not swayed by such emotional appeals. And who gets to define what is irrational?" Barron retorted, his voice unwavering. "Is it the one who clings to the comfort of the tangible, of what can be measured and proven? Or is it the one who dares to reach for something more, something beyond the confines of the physical world? What is rational when you consider the potential for suffering, the loss of purpose that the denial of faith can create?" The exchange had become a duel, a battle of wits played out in front of the assembled scholars and students. Anderson paced slowly in front of the podium, his eyes darting between Barron and the audience, gauging their reactions, searching for weaknesses in his opponent's armor. "Mr. Trump, you're appealing to the masses. The common man. I, for one, care not for the common man. I am not speaking to those who are scared. I am speaking to those who think." "And what of the common man?" Barron questioned, his voice ringing in the spacious hall. "Are they not also deserving of meaning, of hope? Must enlightenment come at the cost of compassion? You speak of progress, but at what price? If the cost is the erosion of the values that have guided humanity for centuries, is it truly progress?" The tension continued to mount as Anderson leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper, a calculated strategy designed to intimidate. "Let me ask you something directly, Mr. Trump. Do you believe in God?" The question hung in the air like a thunderclap. All eyes were on Barron, waiting for his response. He paused, his expression unreadable, before answering. "That, Professor, is a question that transcends the bounds of a simple yes or no. The very nature of faith is complex, personal. To reduce it to a mere answer would be to strip it of its depth, its nuance." Anderson scoffed. "So, a non-answer. Convenient." Barron met his gaze, unflinching. "It is an honest answer. I will say this. I believe in something greater than myself. I believe in the power of love, the strength of community, the importance of striving for something more. Whether you choose to label that God is irrelevant. It is, however, a guiding principle, a source of hope and resilience." The room was still, everyone waiting for Anderson's next move. He walked toward the edge of the stage, looked directly at Barron, and then turned to address the audience. "He uses poetry. He speaks of sentimentality. He is, indeed, a master of the subtle implication." He then turned back to face Barron. "So, Mr. Trump, I propose a challenge. Let us take this debate out of the abstract and into the practical. Let us see which viewpoint holds true in the crucible of reality. I propose a project. A task. A test." He paused for dramatic effect, relishing the moment. "Let us see who can create something of lasting value, something that truly benefits humanity. You, with your faith, your compassion, and your supposed inherent belief in a moral compass. And I, with my reason, my logic, and my quest for scientific truth. We will both undertake a project. A challenge. The winner, as decided by the board of this university and the public, will have their beliefs validated, and the others will be found wanting." Barron's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something akin to excitement crossing his features. He had been challenged, not just intellectually, but practically. "And what is the nature of this challenge, Professor?" he asked, his voice steady. Anderson's lips curled into a knowing smile. "We shall both seek to find a solution to a problem that plagues humanity. A problem of our choosing. And then let the world decide who finds the best solution. What will you choose, Barron?" The silence in the hall was almost suffocating, broken only by the faint rustle of papers and the quiet, rhythmic thump of a heart pounding in anticipation. All eyes were fixed on Barron, awaiting his response to Anderson's audacious challenge. He stood, his gaze locked with the professor's, considering the offer, the potential pitfalls, and the vast implications. This wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a test, a battle for the very soul of their ideas. He took a slow, deliberate breath. "Very well, Professor," he finally said, his voice ringing with newfound determination. "I accept your challenge. But I propose a modification to your terms. Let us not only seek to find a solution, but let us also implement that solution. Let us create, not just speculate." A ripple of surprise passed through the audience. Anderson's eyes widened, then narrowed in thought. He hadn't anticipated this. Implementation. That could take years, involve considerable resources. Precisely, Barron countered. It will test the true merit of our ideas. The best solution is one that survives the complexities of reality. Anderson stroked his chin thoughtfully. You are a bold man, Mr. Trump. Very well. Implementation it is. But what of the problem itself? What should we address? Barron paused, considering the myriad of global challenges facing humanity. Poverty, disease, climate change. He needed a problem that would truly test the core tenets of both their beliefs. He looked out at the audience, at the faces of students and professors, all united in their shared humanity. The problem, he said, his voice resonating with conviction, is the erosion of hope. The increasing despair and cynicism that pervades our modern world. The feeling that meaning is lost and nothing matters. I believe this lack of purpose fuels all the other problems we are facing. A murmur of agreement rippled through the hall. Professor Thompson nodded, recognizing the astute nature of Barron's choice. It was a problem rooted in the very essence of human experience, a true test of faith and reason. Anderson, however, seemed less enthusiastic. An ambitious choice, Mr. Trump. A very subjective one, indeed. But acceptable. I agree. The erosion of hope. It is a problem that resonates with the times. He turned towards the audience, his gaze sweeping across the faces. And how do we measure success in this endeavor? How will we determine who has the most impactful solution? Who will decide on the winner? The board. Public opinion. Let the evaluation be twofold, Barron responded, by a panel of experts, academics, scientists, community leaders, and religious figures, representing a diverse range of viewpoints. And, most importantly, let the ultimate judgment rest with the people. A public vote, informed by our progress, shall be the final arbiter. Anderson smirked. So, you're confident that the common folk will favor faith over facts? I am confident that the truth, in any form, will prevail, Barron said, his voice firm. And I trust in humanity's ability to recognize it. Anderson's lips curved into a decisive smile. Then let the games begin, Mr. Trump. May the best solution win. The clock starts, now. With that pronouncement, a formal air seemed to descend upon the hall, a subtle anticipation of what was to come. The challenge had been accepted. The battle was drawn. As Barron walked away, the weight of the task pressing upon him, he knew he would be facing a monumental challenge. He would face it head-on, knowing the fate of his beliefs, and perhaps even a part of humanity's future, rested upon this trial. He turned to the audience one last time, his eyes searching their faces, their hopes, and their fears. He had a project to begin and an entire world to inspire. The lecture hall emptied, leaving behind the lingering promise of intellectual sparring and the seeds of something truly extraordinary. The erosion of hope could be the problem. But the fight to solve it, the fight to restore faith in the human spirit, would define this new chapter in the journey.